You have to train your
Mm.
community. You have to create some skepticism in the community. Like if you try to launch an ICO on ETC, you're probably not going to be able to do it. There's not many who've succeeded there. Why? Because that entire community is hyper skeptical of ICOs, a consequence of how ETC was created.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're very paranoid about these things. Again, they're like, what's going on here? Because they've trained about this.
So
So
so that
similar
to keep everyone up, ETC Ethereum Classic was born because Ethereum changed. Can you explain how ETC was born? I think you're the best one to explain
So
it.
basically, there was an ICO that created something called the DAO, and it was rushed and it wasn't done properly, and the developers didn't think it through completely. And also, to be fair, Ethereum is not in a state where it can reliably build good code, even if you follow best practices. And as a consequence, the DAO failed, and then they had to make a decision. Do they bail out the DAO or do they let it fail? And so the decision was made to bail it out. It was probably a good decision from a regulatory perspective and a good decision from a consumer protection,
Hmm.
but it was a terrible decision from the core principles upon which the chain was founded. So it created a philosophical split where some people say we would rather live in the hinterlands and endure the scorn of society and the regulator, but keep our principles like Bitcoin has, than basically be a bailout culture where every time a smart contract fails, a decision has to be made whether it's bailed out or not. Like now, a decision has to be made for parity. So the community split, but also it
Yeah.
meant that people who live in that community were much more skeptical about ICOs because they start asking questions like, how do we make sure this doesn't turn into the next DAO? There's no backseas. We don't get a recall switch. So we have to
Exactly.
be very, very careful about where we send our money and what we do with
And
it.
that was pretty catastrophic. I mean, the hacker managed to siphon money and lock it up for. It got locked up, but they managed to siphon that from the smart contracts, and there was nothing they can do. It was technically legal under the code that they written. The
Right.
kind of sloppy. Now we can see it as sloppy code. But yeah, because of that sloppy code, the hacker managed to kind of legally within that framework siphon the Ethereum from the DAO. So yeah.
And also, I mean, just look at Bitcoin when the Mt. Gox incident happened. This was catastrophic, like
Hmm.
$700 million. And some of the Bitcoin core developers had their own money in Mt. Gox, a lot of it. So that was a really hard decision, too. They probably could have dreamed up some way of freezing and restoring the money and, doing some sort of pool. But, it was real difficult. But the conversation of intervention never came up because
No.
the principles of that ecosystem are so deeply ingrained that would be antithetical to every single thing they stand for. But Ethereum lives on a
And technically, we still have a debate as to when the hack occurred. I mean,
right,
it's like
right,
it's still
exactly.
conspiracy theories going on that it was much earlier than originally
Right.
announced.
It's a difficult thing. So I can see both sides of it. And to be honest with you, when we started Ethereum, there were actually two Ethereums. It wasn't like they just split and magically two Ethereums came. There were always two Ethereums. There was one group of people that came to the project say, we love Bitcoin, we love everything about it. Bitcoin's awesome, but it's just not feature rich enough. We want a programming language with it, make Bitcoin better. And that was the group I was in. And there was another group who said, this is a world computer and we want to build decentralized infrastructure. And this is super cool technology experiment. That's the group Vitalik was in. So that's the whole Web3 thing and kill Amazon and make the internet better.
Hmm.
But embedded in that philosophy is you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to move fast. You're going to break things. And so you're going to fork often.
Yeah.
And it's okay to reverse things because this is all beta. And principles are secondary to progress, and principles are secondary to adoption because the ultimate goal is a better internet. The ultimate goal is something decentralized. Both are noble, both are great ideas. One is a commodity, the other one is infrastructure. And so we had different views on how these things ought to work. And I was in one, and he was in the other. No hard feelings.
Right.
What was really amazing to me though is that if I was an Ethereum holder, I would love both of them. I would be like, I would love to see ETC succeed because you gave me some. Why the
Hmm.
hell? It's like waking up one day, you have money in your wallet, and then somebody just doubles it and you have green money and red money. Wouldn't you want the red money to be as worth as much
Well,
as the green money?
technically,
Because
but
you
you
just
don't want a
got it.
community to split as well. It's hard to argue both ways. I
Split
mean,
because
uh,
just like with the Bitcoin Cash issue, there were irreconcilable differences of
mm,
philosophy between these two, and frankly, one was holding the other one back. If you need to do 35 forks to get to your ultimate vision, and you need to do them in 6 years, having a group of people who say move slowly and deliberately in code is law is counterproductive to that vision. You need to exile them. And
right.
what Ethereum Classic did is it took a group of people who were living in that ecosystem who would have inevitably been a barrier to change and put them into a different ecosystem where they could be free to innovate at their own pace and free to innovate with their own ideas. Furthermore, those people can now follow a completely different path than what you followed. And by the way, you now own both of them. Why is that a bad thing? That's a great thing. You're making your own system better, and now you have basically ownership in a different journey and